Helen stepped outside her front door to see what the weather was like. It was sunny and warm. That was nice because for the past 2 weeks it had been cold and rainy. It had been so cold that she had had to turn her heater on. She was lucky because her heater worked and she could pay her heating bills. Some people in Los Angeles were not so lucky. Unable to use their home heater, they placed charcoal into a barbecue grill and lit it. The heat kept them warm, but the carbon monoxide killed them. This happens almost every winter in Los Angeles. People shut all the windows tight to keep the cold out, then light the charcoal. Soon enough, the oxygen in their home is consumed by the open flames. The family suffocates to death. Everyone knows that smoke detectors are required in Los Angeles, but many people don't know about or don't think they need carbon monoxide detectors. They're not expensive. A $25 investment can save a family from death. People always think that nothing bad will happen to them. It always happens to the other guy. So they forget to put fresh batteries into their smoke detectors annually, and they don't bother to buy carbon monoxide detectors. Jerome turned off the TV. He had just watched a couple of South Park cartoons. South Park is an amusing series about elementary school kids living in a small town in Colorado. The first cartoon was about Herman, who wanted to become strong and muscular. He asked his mother to buy a supplement that was advertised on TV. The supplement was actually nothing but sugar, but the TV ad promised that it would make you strong and muscular. Instead, it made Herman very fat. Worse, Herman refused to believe that he had become fat. Even though all his friends were calling him Super Fat Boy, he told them that he was Super Muscle Boy. Finally, when Herman walked onto the stage to receive an award in the school auditorium, the stage collapsed. Then he realized that maybe he was super fat. The second cartoon was about a dog that followed Lenny home. Lenny loved the dog until he found out it was gay. Then he hated the dog. But Big Al took Lenny to the city's home for gay animals. While there, Lenny decided that it was okay to be gay. When he got home, he hugged his dog and took it for a walk. He didn't even mind when it sniffed other male dogs. George wore a pair of blue shorts around the house. They were old, faded, and ugly, but they were comfortable. And when you are at home, you want to be comfortable. It wouldn't be called home sweet home if you didn't feel comfortable there. But when he put on his blue shorts one morning, the button was just hanging on by a thread. That single button was the only thing that held his shorts up. George could do two things. He could wait until the button fell off. When that happened, it would probably roll under the sofa and be lost forever. Or he could sew the button on securely before it fell off. He found his sewing kit. He threaded the needle and tied a knot at the end of the thread. Then he started the needle through the cloth. He directed it through one of the holes in the button. Then he reversed direction. He put the needle back through a different hole and then through the cloth again. He repeated this motion through all 4 buttonholes until the button was tight. Then he tied a bunch of knots in the last bit of thread and snipped off the excess thread. He put on the shorts and buttoned the button. It was strong. Good for another 10 years, he smiled to himself. Sammy looked at the pile of paper on the floor. Whenever he finished reading his mail or a newspaper or magazine, he threw it into this pile. This was his recycling pile. At the moment, it was almost 2 feet high. It was time to recycle. He squatted down, protecting his back. Sometimes, just sitting down would cause his back to go out for a week. He scooped his hands under the pile and slowly stood up. He walked over to his front door. Hands full, he struggled to turn the doorknob and open the door. He walked outside and down the stairs. So far, he hadn't dropped one piece of paper. He walked to the blue trash bin. There was no way to lift the lid of the recycling bin with his hands full. He carefully put the pile of papers down and then opened the lid. The bin was completely full. Sammy gathered the pile into his arms and trudged back upstairs. Pleased that he still had not dropped any paper, he lowered the pile back onto the floor. Then he stood up, but just a little bit too fast. Spock is a main character in the popular TV show Star Trek. He is half Vulcan, half human. A Vulcan has no emotions, but is extremely smart and logical. Spock joined the all-human crew of the spaceship Enterprise to explore the universe. Spock's dad, Sarek, is Vulcan. He had wanted Spock to attend the Vulcan Science Academy and then join Sarek's research firm. When Spock left his family to join the Enterprise, Sarek refused to talk to him anymore. In one episode, representatives from various planets had an emergency meeting. Sarek and Amanda, Spock's human mom, came aboard the Enterprise. Spock said hello to his dad, but Sarek ignored him. The next day, Sarek had a critical medical problem. He was losing a lot of blood and needed immediate surgery. Spock was the only one on the Enterprise who also had Vulcan blood. Even though he could die, Spock offered every drop of his blood to save his dad. Dr. Bones McCoy operated on Sarek and saved his life. The next day, when Sarek was told that his son had saved his life, he didn't say thank you to Spock. Amanda got very angry with her husband. She told him that he should hug Spock and thank him. Sarek refused. He said that his son did the logical thing. "You don't thank someone for doing the logical thing," he told his wife. Spock told Amanda that his dad was right, which made her even angry. Kevin had just finished dessert. It was a piece of dark chocolate, washed down with a glass of cold milk. Delicious. He rinsed his mouth out with a glass of water and then spit into the kitchen sink. He sat down at the dining room table and grabbed some floss. He carefully flossed his top teeth and then his bottom teeth. Flossing was a chore. The floss almost always got stuck between two teeth in the upper back and two teeth in the lower front. Finally finished, he threw the frayed floss into the trash. He went into the bathroom and grabbed his electric toothbrush. TV ads always show people putting toothpaste onto the entire length of the brush. Of course, that was to get them to use up the tube faster, so they'd have to buy another tube sooner. Kevin put just a little toothpaste onto the brush. He brushed for about a minute. He spent another 30 seconds brushing his tongue. Then he spit out all the toothpaste and gargled and spit again. Brushing and flossing are such a pain, he thought. If they can put a man on the moon, why can't they invent something easier and faster than toothpaste and dental floss? Heather loved the freedom of soaring high above the land and sea. She learned how to hang glide from her boyfriend. Initially, she was scared to death. The first time he took her up, she hung on for dear life. But by the end of that flight, she was hooked. Half a year later, she bought her own hang glider. Almost every weekend, she drove to Torrey Pines and leaped off the cliff. She could soar to La Jolla in less than 5 minutes. She liked to fly over the town. She would wave at kids, pointing and looking up at her, and they would shout and wave back excitedly. One day she was returning to the launch site when she noticed a red hawk rapidly approaching her. It briefly disappeared. Then she heard its claws ripping the wing's fabric. It flew off, but the next thing she knew, it was flying straight at her. She turned out of its way, but it dove at her again. She was scared. She had to evade its attacks 4 times before she was able to land safely. Even after she landed, it circled overhead, as if daring her to fly again. "What did I do to you?" she wondered. As she drove home, she found out that she had been lucky. The radio news reported that in Australia, a hang glider had been attacked by not 1, but 2 eagles. Maybe it was something in the air, Heather thought. Rod was a manager at House Depot. He worked about 50 hours a week. He loved his job, although the extra hours cut into the time he could spend with his 3 little girls. One morning, he was supposed to go home at 7 a.m. Instead, he stayed on to help out for 3 more hours. He was just about to leave at 10 a.m. when he heard something. At one of the checkout counters, he saw a man dressed in white painter's coveralls pointing a gun at the female checker. He had on a yellow cap, a white plastic painter's mask, and white gloves. Rod hurried over. Times in Los Angeles had changed. All managers now received training on how to respond to armed robberies and hostage-taking. Rod was nervous, but he knew what he was supposed to do. He approached the gunman. "Sir, please don't point that gun. We will give you all the money you—" The gunman didn't even wait for Rod to finish his sentence. He shot Rod in the stomach. The checker screamed. The gunman ran out to a white van and hopped in. The van sped off. Rod didn't even make it to surgery. The killing made all the TV news shows. House Depot offered a $100,000 reward